It's Paul Joseph Watson with Infowars.com, and I'm delighted to be joined by John Scobie of We Are Change Birmingham. And basically what this is about, most of you will remember last summer we had the BBC 9/11 conspiracy road trip where they took a bunch of people on the road to New York, got them to talk to a bunch of people, and basically it was an exercise in forcing them to recant and withdraw their beliefs that anything other than the official 9/11 narrative was true. And now, despite being bashed from pillar to post about that hit piece, the BBC is back with another hit piece coming up this July, which is about the 7/7 attacks in London, and it's called 7/7 Conspiracy Road Trip. And John is actually one of the major players in that production. He was one of the road trippers that the BBC selected to take part in the show. And he's gleaned some very interesting information about the whole process, about how these hit pieces are executed. So, John, just tell us how you're approached about this documentary and some of the filming that that's already taken place, and what they told you as soon as they got you on board with it.
Hi, Paul. Yeah, well, it's been a very interesting fortnight for me, because the BBC approached me via a couple of other members in the alternative research community to take part in this conspiracy road trip. And I didn't really initially want to do it. I thought if I was going to do it, I needed to get the facts out there and make it and do it justice. That's what I really wanted to do, and hopefully I did do that. The crux of the matter is that I was approached and asked whether I wanted to be on it. I presumed that it was going to be 4 other sort of well-informed people that took part in the show. As it was, I was actually the only person that was overly interested in 7/7 in the whole process. From the word go, the researchers said to me on the first day of filming, they do a little introduction shoot when they come and film you in your hometown. They said, don't expect it not to be biased. And I think I even had that on the phone from one of the researchers before that. And then they said, this researcher and camera guy said to me, well, usually there's 5 levels of executives of producer directors, director producers, whatever they want to call them, that this kind of process would go through.
So let's stop right, let's focus on that, right? One of the very first things they told you, this is the BBC, which has the word impartiality in its charter about a dozen times. One of the first things they told you was, by the way, this is going to be a hit piece, just straight up, before they've even started filming it.
They didn't say it's going to be a hit piece. The
they implied it.
Bill said, well, don't expect it not to be biased.
Yeah, so they're basically saying it's going to be biased.
Wow.
And then, as you said, you learned there were 5 executive level directors. To make it clear, the people on the ground making this documentary, none of those are the 5 executive level directors. These are 5 people that sit above them. They make the decisions, they make the edits, they decide who they're going to make look stupid, what parts they're going to leave on the cutting room floor. Basically, my point about it is, this is BBC 3. I mean, it's going to get millions of views because they replay it over and over again. But, it's not like it's Panorama or BBC 1. And yet, just for this one show, which is hosted by a comedian, they've got 5 executive level directors. Doesn't that tell you how sensitive and worried they are about this subject?
Well, I don't know exactly what the process that obviously the editing goes through and the director process that they go through. It was just that one of the camera guys and researchers gleaned to me that was kind of an industry standard, or maybe a program standard. It's probably more for controversial material, I would imagine, yes. So, and I'll get onto something more about that in a moment. But yeah, the whole experience, to be honest, was very surreal, very kind of strange. They're being very, very nice to you, but obviously I was totally aware that they were probably going to try and portray me to look like either a nut or a idiot. So, I played a bit of not a game, I just was very, very polite and pleasant to them, and just portrayed myself in the best way that I could to them, and hoped that they wouldn't edit me to look like a nut or an idiot. And obviously I did my research before I went in there.
You did your homework, yeah. Tell us about the core issues that you went in there that remain unanswered.
So I was very much aware that, if I went in there and said, I find this strange, then they would probably, in some way or another, be able to get some type of expert to prove, not necessarily to me, but certainly to the BBC viewers, that whatever wasn't a conspiracy or a conspiracy theory, as they kept using the terminology. And I, halfway through the week, by the time I sort of got my strength up, I suppose, and realised that it was a proper fight, I started saying, "What, you mean conspiracy fact?" And trying to reverse their sort of psychology. I suppose really they weren't interested in the issue or conspiracies or any of this. None of them believe in conspiracies. So that's from the director through to the camera crew, the audio crew, the researchers. And I have to say, they were absolutely all lovely people, and the comedian Andrew Maxwell was a really lovely guy as well, a very well-informed guy. He's an Irish bloke, and he has got a very good insight into the IRA and terrorism, and he knew a lot of the facts that I would say the alternative research community knows, and he just sort of says, "Oh, it's all coincidence. There's no conspiracy. It's all coincidence." So that was pretty much my battle for the whole week. Was no, it's not cock-up or coincidence. It's conspiracy. So the facts that I, maintained the whole way through, which I knew they weren't going to be able to change, because unless the government brought out more information, which obviously would be, beneficial if they did. We're all after the truth. That's what, we want to know. So I stuck to the fact that the police, in the official account, in the official narrative that came out sort of 14 months after 7/7, they said that the bombers had got the 742 train, and of course when Freedom of Information Act requests went in, it was found that the 742 didn't run that day, and so they had to backpedal and say that they got the 725.
And that was the official story for years, that they got the 740, even though the train never existed, it never left the station. And you've got them supposedly catching this train when they're caught on camera entering Luton Station at literally 3 or 4 minutes before the train actually leaves. They had to buy their tickets. It's physically impossible for them to even get on that train after years they were saying they got on a train that never existed.
Yeah, it's all very strange to me still. I mean, I'll talk you through the whole process of the week if you'd like. But for example, we went to Luton Station and we were instructed to sort of give ourselves 2 or 3 minutes to be able to buy a ticket to get on the next train. Now, for whatever reason, I was trying to put my £10 note in the machine to buy my ticket, and I was putting it with the Queen's face up, which is how, usually ticket machines work in the UK. And the machine wouldn't accept the note. So I turned it over, crossed the platform, got my ticket, turned the note over and the machine worked, crossed the platform, and actually missed the train, missed the 742 or 743. So, even with us having researchers helping us, they were walking the whole route with us, we still managed to miss the first train. Now, on the London line there, you've got trains every few minutes, so it didn't really prove anything. My main fact was, just to put the element of doubt into people's minds, the police got this wrong the first time, what else have they got wrong? Just that question, in fact, of, in the official account, which is supposed to be the narrative, which took them over a year to write, one of the major issues, they got the train time wrong, and the train never even ran. So we don't really know what happened that day, because we have an image of them at Luton Station. They wanted us all to sort of try and get on the bandwagon and say that this was a faked image, and then I think they were going to go and
they tried to set up that straw man by saying some people claim this is a fake image. It's a complete rabbit hole dead end. They wanted you to go down that rabbit hole, didn't they?
So then my other facts that I stuck to were the fact that at King's Cross, the last image that we have of the bombers is at King's Cross, and we then have no more CCTV footage of them from that point.
It conveniently failed.
Well, the really interesting bit of that, of course, is that the week before, when they were doing their dummy run, if that's indeed what it was, because I feel that I've probably done more research into this than many people now, considering I was part of this program. We've met experts and all the rest of it, and I'm totally not convinced still. It's all very, very strange.
And you actually met one of those experts, and you plied him with questions about terrorism, a so-called expert on terrorism, and basically he had no answers. Is that the case?
Yes, that's true. There was a terrorism lawyer that had seen some of the secret evidence. Simon, he's a gentleman from Leeds. I can't remember his surname at the moment. And he'll be on the programme. You'll see it. And he had seen some of the secret evidence from 7/7. He'd been pretty much on the government's bench when trying to prove these four men were the guilty parties, and he said, no, I've heard them in cars having conversations talking about fraud and maybe terrorism. He was very unclear as to what they were actually talking about in the car. He said, oh, well, it's linked to fraud, and it was all quite strange, and I think that probably will come across in the programme. But I just said to him, have you heard of Operation Gladio, or Gladio? And he said, no, what's that? And I thought, oh, God, this is a terrorism expert. Who's a lawyer who's working for the government, putting people behind bars, and he doesn't realise that NATO was involved in bombing their own people for 30 years. And I posed that question to everybody that we met, because I felt that was a key part of the information. And I think only one of them actually was able to respond and say, oh, yes, I know about that. There's nothing to do with that.
And you also were saying you went and they took you up to Leeds to meet some of the neighbours of the accused bombers. Tell us what they said.
Yeah, I'll run you through the week's events as quickly as concisely as I can. So initially we started off in Leeds. We went to Beeston, which is where 3 of the bombers were from. We met this woman called Sasha, who is part of the sort of alternative research community, and she says that she was served fish and chips by Mohammed Siddiqui Khan on the Tuesday evening. 7/7 was on the Thursday, and he said how he was going to London on Thursday and how he was really looking forward to it. Him and his mates were going up for a day out.
Like he would broadcast, if they were planning a secretive terrorist plot, like he would broadcast the fact that he's travelled plans.
It's just strange. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but it just doesn't seem likely, does it?
It's more possible with the narrative about the whole they were involved in a dummy test. All the evidence suggests that that's what happened, but go ahead.
Yeah, and of course what the evidence that they tried to pry us with in Leeds was these images from these men's houses, this men's allegedly these guys' flat that was the bomb factory. So we saw where they lived, we saw the fish and chip shopping centre, and it's got a church in it, and it...
Go.
So we went to all these different locations in Beeston in Leeds where the bombers were from, and obviously they showed us images of a bomb factory, an alleged bomb factory, and really at this point I had to make a decision. Either I start saying as I really thought, which was that could all be totally staged, if they're going to do a black op, of course they're going to make sure that is something that looks like a bomb factory. But also I thought, well, maybe I should give it the benefit of the doubt, and follow their story, so to speak, and see if I could, still follow their story and still not disprove them, but show the errors in the official narrative. So then on the Tuesday we went from Beeston and travelled down to Birmingham, which is where I'm from, and we went and met an imam in the local mosque who had put out a number of documentaries about the 7/7 attacks and various things, and they pretty much tried to make him look like I felt they tried to make him look like a bit of a mad Muslim terrorist because he put these DVDs out, these conspiracy DVDs. That was their whole thing. Well, this is this is terrorist material, they were saying.
John Hill went to court over it, didn't he, over Ripple Effect, for sending it to a judge.
Well, yeah, precisely. We know of other examples of where people have been arrested, locked up for having documentaries, and it's absolutely insane. But we left that guy, and he actually, Dr. Nassim at Birmingham Central Mosque, put on a very good he didn't blame the government any which way. He just said, look, there's questions that need to be answered in, which is what I was trying to do. So that was good because it reinforced to me what I was trying to do on the whole trip. We ended up in Luton on Tuesday evening. That was where they had us at the station, and they wanted one of us to comment on the fact that this image had probably been doctored. I said, not part of my remit, not why I'm here. Don't know anything about Photoshop. You'd have to ask somebody that does. And they did try and encourage one of the other contestants, Tony, to take comment on that. And I sort of said, Tony, just be careful.
You were trying to school the other people on the show, because few of them basically knew nothing. Few of them knew a little bit, but they hadn't done near as much research as you've done.
Yeah, well, I'd just done a lot of cramming the week before on the important issues, so I knew where I stood, and I knew that unless they showed me some evidence to counteract my issues, I wasn't going to change my stance on the situation. However much they showed me to convince me of X, Y and Z. We blew up a bus on the Thursday and tried to show that, well, look, you can blow up a bus using homemade ingredients, therefore the bombers did it, therefore there's no conspiracy.
Just because you can blow up a bus, that means the official narrative's completely true. I don't understand that.
Well, that's what I don't get, but I suppose this is part of the mainstream, and in fact, I think most people in sort of learned professions or in science, in the arenas of science, understand that you have to actually prove a hypothesis. You can't just prove something that then that somehow proves something else. It's total nonsense. But I went along with all of this stuff just so that to the watcher at home I would come across like a more reasoned human being, a more sort of down the line. I wasn't accusing the government of everything that I probably am suspicious of them for. So on the Tuesday we stayed in Luton in the evening. And then Wednesday morning they got us up at the crack of dawn to re-follow. The idea is we were re-following the bombers' route to cement in the public's mind and our minds that this is what actually happened. So we got on the train at Luton. As I mentioned earlier, we missed that first train, so we missed the 7:25 and got probably the 7:30. And then I was then pushed to get my camera, which was my sort of piece of evidence, which was supposed to be my bomb, to Edgware Road, which is where I was supposed to have been setting that off, so to speak. So the 4 contestants carried the route of the 4 bombers, and actually it was pretty tight. And my only observation there is that if the bombers had got any train after 7:30, they would have most likely not been able to set those bombs off at the times that at 8:50, which is when they supposedly were, because you have to get off the train. It takes about 5-6 minutes to walk to the tube. So unless you were running through the station, which they apparently weren't, they were walking around calmly, according to the inquest and the official narrative. Not that anybody believe anything in that. And then on the on the Wednesday afternoon, we met survivors, survivor's father and a gentleman who had actually helped that day, pretty much. And the concurrent theme was that they all felt that the government had massively cocked up, but that there was no conspiracy. And I was very sensitive to the fact that these people were, very closely involved with all this. So I didn't want to start making outlandish comments or asking.
Did they try and play that card though, where because you question the official story, that means you're insulting the victims? That old chestnut.
Well, I think they probably would have done, but I didn't want to play that card. I'd seen previous documentaries. Oh yeah, what I should say is this isn't a documentary, it's a reality show.
Yeah.
It's following 4 people who...
But they still got 5 executive editors for a reality show. That shows you how seriously they treat it.
Well, apparently the BBC 3 one had... the 9/11 one had 3 million views, which was the #1 showing programme on BBC 3 to date. So I'm expecting there's going to be a couple of million watch it, I would have thought. But in terms of where we got back to on the day, we met a gentleman who was at Tavistock Square that day. He was a chef. I mean, you'll see all this on the programme, but briefly, he had ran out and used aprons and cloths and things to help bandage up, obviously people that were hurt. And everyone said, the conspiracy that they were trying to disprove on this point was the fact that some people say online that that area was a staged event, and that Tavistock Square, there were apparently people who were already bandaged, as eyewitnesses had seen them while things were going on the bus, while the bus bomb had gone off, for example. So I didn't want to get involved in any of that and sort of saying any of that, because I could see how images online can paint one picture, and actually it might just be a coincidence and it just might look very strange. So I left all that well alone. I just asked the very simple fact: do you have any need, or do you want an independent or public inquiry or investigation? And every person that I asked this question to went into length why they wanted a public investigation and a public inquiry. And I just went, thank you very much, that's all I wanted to know. And I mean, their reasons are different from my reasons, but I share many of their reasons now, which is, for example, the cock-ups within MI5. If we're going to play this story of it was all cock-ups, then we need to follow that to the letter, why MI5 did cock up so much, why they had followed two of the bombers for such a long time, why they had let them go to Pakistan and then let them carry out these attacks. Yet in the inquiry they said that they were clean skins, so we need to find out what's going on with our intelligence services.
Tell us about Peter Power. Because you were going to cover the exercises as well. Of course, whenever he's confronted on these simultaneous exercises, which are astronomically impossible to have occurred, same blast, same location.
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, and when people try and confront him on it, he hides in a cupboard, which is somewhat telling. But tell us about the exercises and how that played into the show.
Okay, so as many people may be aware, there was an exercise, a drill running that morning by Peter Power Visor Consultants that envisaged, to quote him, precisely the same thing, that it happened as it happened, and we had to switch into pretty much running the running reality of an exercise that they'd. But of course, when seen on Conspiracy Files, he backpedals and says, "Oh no, it was a PowerPoint presentation." So, this is very strange. Of course, what I did was I tried to link it back to the bigger picture, realising that the viewer at home, wasn't able to see all these facts. So I wanted to put all of the coincidences together. So I mentioned the fact that Mayor Giuliani was running a drill on 9/11 Tripod 2, which made them get out of World Trade Center Building 7, out of the FEMA command base. And then I also mentioned that the ATF were running a drill, of course, on the Oklahoma City bombing, and just, and asked the host, who was trying to shout me down, although he's a nice bloke, he's trying to make TV, he's trying to make it interesting and change my mind. I said, do you really believe that all those drills, that there's no coincidence or conspiracy behind all those drills? And one evening in the bar, he said, I need to look into that. Because obviously I brought up the ATF bit, but by the morning, he'd forgotten all about that.
Blinkers were back on. But the point is that Peter Power knew that the bombs were simultaneous before anyone else did. Isn't that the case?
I mean, that was one of the first things that cropped up in my research, of course, is that he's saying simultaneous. The government didn't come out till the 9th on the Saturday and say it was simultaneous.
And he was on radio and TV the same day saying that. So how did he know?
That morning, and you've got to be careful with this, because there will be conflicting reports at any emergency. It doesn't necessarily mean conspiracy, and I suppose that's one of the things that I did learn. Although it very well may be a tactic of confusion, which it all looks like it is a tactic of confusion, if I'm honest.
And just starting to sum up. Their mission obviously was to make you recant. I remember you were telling me towards the end they really tried to push, have you changed your opinion? Tell us about how it all ended, the filming.
Okay, so on the Thursday, we had this very harrowing day on the Wednesday. On the Thursday we went to some sort of quarry and blew up this bus. The BBC very kindly shipped in a bus for us to blow up and used the same kind of ingredients that the bombers had allegedly used in those bombs, and they proved to us, yes, you can blow up a bus with, I might as well tell you, hydrogen peroxide and black pepper. And obviously it's down to the quantities and the mixtures and all the rest of it. But it was a very small amount of the substance, I think I should probably say that. And it ripped the top off the bus very similar to what happened to the number 30 bus that day. So I just said, okay, yeah, great experiment, well done. You've wasted the BBC's taxpayers' money. But you
doesn't explain how what was it? One person in the official inquiry, which wasn't an investigation, saw one of the bombers, and on the bus, isn't it true that nobody saw the bomber?
Well, I think you've got to be careful again with eyewitness statements and witness reports, because the establishment, whoever you want, the police, whoever, will always push the reports, the witness reports that fit their story. Obviously, they are building a case. And what happens, I believe, what I felt was happening last week was that, I was bringing up other witnesses that had seen different things, and they kind of dismissed that. The establishment then dismissed that as, well, there'll always be the odd person that sees the odd thing. Well, yeah, it doesn't mean it's not the bloody truth, though.
We got the pictures of the train blasted upwards from underneath.
Oh, well, they explained that to me, Paul.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they explained that to me. So we had I gave all these people the utmost respect, because I didn't have evidence that they were involved in it. So I had to give them the utmost respect, and I thought I was more likely to get more truth out of them that way. But then I did ask them the hard questions. This bomber, explosives expert, military, he could have been in on it for all I know, pretty much said, oh yes, you can get metal to point upwards if the bomb's inside the carriage. Basically, because it's in a tunnel, the sound wave or the ripple bounces outwards and then bounces back inwards and would cause the metal then to come back up. And I didn't argue with him, because I thought, I'm going to look like a prat if I argue with him, so I'll just ask him the questions. Does he want official investigation? How do we know we weren't lied to? Gladio, look at what Tony Blair was, for the Iraq War, the Downing Street memos. So really, I just tried to put across to these people that there was something strange going on and that they needed to investigate it, really, that they were responsible for investigating it.
Let's not forget as well to throw this in that Dr. Rory Ridley Duff, who is a lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, he actually did an academic analysis of BBC Conspiracy Files, which was their previous hit piece documentary series about 7/7, and compared it to Ripple Effect, which is one of the most prominent alternative media documentaries. And
which is still a bit quirky.
Well, yeah, it's quirky, but it gives the argument. It talks about the Canary Wharf thing, which was never explained. Shootings that happened there were never explained by the official narrative. And he found that Ripple Effect, the explanation of events in Ripple Effect, was more likely to be credible than the explanation of events in the BBC documentary, which was, of course, a reflection of the official story. So that's an academic study. That's not conspiracy theories with tinfoil hats making stuff up. Academic study found alternative media to be more credible than their official narrative hit piece.
Well, that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. And it's going to air on 7th July this...
No, it's going to air in October.
October? Oh, those 5 executive level directors are going to be busy then for the next few months. Do you think they're going to edit you? Because you said you were in it most. The most amount of talking was you, because you've done your homework.
I asked the questions first. As somebody who wants to find out the truth probably would do. And
so, do you think they're just going to edit you out of this? So they've got the people who don't know much, the UFO people who kind of make it look a bit crazy, or do you think it's going to be a hit piece? I'm betting it is, because every single other one has been. What do you think?
Well, they're certainly going to edit it. Whether we hear about Gladio in detail, which I'd mentioned, as I said, in every interview. Whether we hear about, $6 billion going to Al Qaeda and Bin Laden in 1989, whether we hear about, that kind of stuff that I was bringing up, Al Qaeda links, mercenary group, I was sort of trying to condense a lot of
terror expert you said didn't know about that either, did he? Or he just claimed ignorance?
So yeah, we had a couple of the experts. So then we had a terrorism psychologist, a Muslim terrorism psychologist, and he had studied the 9/11 and 7/7 bombers, And obviously I immediately took offence to that because I consider both of those operations to be some type of inside job narrated by the state. And just his psychology. I mean, I've heard people talk about terrorism psychology when suicide bombings. They're usually in oppressed third world nations, and yeah, there can be religious links to it, but not kind of how we've seen, with 9/11 and 7/7. They were definitely bigger scale events than we had previously seen.
But these guys on 7/7 didn't fit that profile. They were going into McDonald's, making arguments, drawing attention to themselves, which is the last thing you'd want to do. Some of them were active in the community. There was a teacher. People said, they were barely even political. They were very westernized.
Paul, they used to get kids that were addicted to heroin and crack and sort of make them go cold turkey to get them off drugs. They were involved with gang youth projects. They were approached. One of the guys was approached by the police regularly to sort out gang violence in the area. These guys did not fit the profile. Of course, the psychologist explained to me that this is what sleeper cells do, because they have to integrate within society. And there was some stuff I heard last week which I will take as facts, and there was some stuff which was nonsense, and that chap was speaking nonsense. And I hope people, not rudely or anything like that, but give him a call and ask him to look at some of the facts, related to some of the things that his reason, I think, for being the way he was, and his opinion was because somebody had tried to recruit him at university to some kind of group. No, I was just thinking, well, who's to say that wasn't some government-backed group or Al-Qaeda that's still being funded by the West, or, God knows. So his mentality and philosophy was actually very anti-Islamic, I found. And I said that in the interview afterwards. I said, he is spreading Islamophobia, not me. I mean, they were trying to it's always, the opposite side of the argument. You're spreading Islamophobia by spreading conspiracy theories. You're helping the terrorists by spreading conspiracy theories. I mean, these people are living in a bit of a deluded world. I think by the end of the week, the director and all of the crew realised how seriously I took it. Not in a freaky way, obsessed way, just, we need to find out what really happens. And privately, I would speak to them all. And they all had their own doubts on a number of the issues. So yeah, I stuck to my guns, and on the last interview, where we went and stood outside the Houses of Parliament, and they kept driving us round and getting us on and off the bus to take shots of getting on and off the bus, because as I said, it's a reality show, and that's what the majority of it was. Questions on the bus. And obviously we were on the bus for a long time, so we were under a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. But after seeing the previous ones, I knew that all I had to do was keep everybody calm and stop people from arguing, and we would come across a lot more reasoned probably than the last lot.
All right, we're going to leave it there because we've just about run out of time, but we'll be sure to get more updates on this before the show actually goes out, before it broadcasts in October. John Scobie, We Are Change Birmingham, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Paul. Cheers.